Alright. Alright, today we're going to talk about some things because I'm really tired and I can't sleep, so I'm going to teach about networking. So, today we're going to talk about IP address, Subnet Mask, default gateway. What the fuck are these things? Why do I need them? And basically, why are they good for life? Well, they're not. Fuck them. But, these are three things that you need in order to communicate realistically on the internet using IPv4. In IPv6, the only thing you really need is your IP address and your default gateway. That is because in IPv6, all the subnets are the same size. Now, let's talk about what these things are. IP address. You probably think that an IP address is a unique address that identifies your computer on the network, right? That definition is bullshit. First of all, unique address. Your chances are your IP address that you're using right now on your computer probably looks something like this. And that is not unique. But it is private, which means that that address only exists within your network, and it gets translated to something public when it leaves your network. Why that happens is due to a large number of things, mostly running out of IP addresses and really, really cheap security. But let's not talk about NAT right now. Let's talk about IP addresses. So we've already established that these are not unique. Even if they are not private, that does not mean they are not unique. There is such thing as anycast and multicast, which all basically involve machines having the same IP address on a somewhat more global scale. Now that we know it's not a unique address, it's an address that identifies your computer. No, it's not, because your computer generally has between 2 and 10 IP addresses. It is an address that identifies an interface between a network and your computer. What's an interface? Let's take a look. So here is your computer. When I say here, I mean here is your computer. So you are probably connected to your stupid Linksys or Netgear wireless router, which is probably connected to some DSL modem or something elsewhere. You probably also have a phone, maybe like an iPhone, which has a cell signal, and you probably have like some kind of wireless hotspot set up, so your laptop might also be talking to that. On the other hand, you might also have something with Bluetooth that your laptop might be talking to, not necessarily on the internet, and you probably have a FireWire port that's plugged into maybe a hard drive, and your computer decides that it can have an IP address as well. On top of all of these things, your computer also has one more interface, and that is so that it can talk to itself. Yes, that's right. And that's called the loopback interface. Each place where these connections cross the circle is an interface. That's an interface. Try that in red. That's an interface, that's an interface, that's an interface, that's an interface, that's an interface. Even if they're not being used, even if they're not up. So, for example, this one is 192.168. Smaller font, please. 1101, great. This interface up here might be 192.168.254 or something like that. This one down here, talking to loopback, up here is that. This one might be something else. And this one over here probably is made up by your computer because no one ever bothered to assign it an address. So now that you know what your IP address is, where does it come from? Well, depends on what the address is. If it's a loopback address, it's always the same. If it's made up by your computer, that's generally up to your operating system. If it's something private, it's generally handed out by your company's DHCP server or your local router. And if it's connected directly to the internet, like the other end of this router, that is assigned by your upstream provider. Now, let's talk about shit. Now, everything that we've gone over so far, which is only one thing, the IP address, is all you need for 2 or 3 or even 4 computers to communicate. All you need is a hub, or a switch, and you plug them in together and assign some IP addresses, and at this point, it really doesn't matter what IP addresses you assign. Now, you could assign private IP addresses like this, or you can just make up, whatever fucking numbers you feel like. Let's just say 99, 99, 99, 1, 99, 99, 99, 7, 99, 99, 44, 3, 5, 9, 3, 2, and this will work. I just made up 4 completely random numbers, and nonetheless, on this computer, if I want to ping 99.99.44.3, I will be able to ping it without a subnet mask, without a default gateway, with completely made up numbers that aren't even the same, any of it. Why does this work? Because nothing else needs to happen. What am I talking about? Basically, we're not routing yet. This is a switch, or a hub. If this is a hub, that essentially means that every packet or every frame that is being sent by one machine is being received by every other machine. If it's a switch, what it means is that every frame that's being sent by this machine is either being routed to its correct destination based on MAC address, or is being routed to every other machine. So either way, this works. Why does this work? It works because of ARP. What the fuck is ARP? ARP. ARP. No. Not the synthesizer term. I'm talking address resolution protocol. What the fuck does that mean? Basically, it means that any two machines that can talk to each other in the same broadcast domain. What does that mean? It's a fancy way of saying that if this one sends out a broadcast packet, this one will receive it. If it can, they're in the same broadcast domain. What the fuck is a broadcast packet? A broadcast packet is, or specifically in this case, a broadcast frame is a frame that is sent to the broadcast MAC address of that. This essentially means that it's destined for all network interfaces that receive it. Basically meaning that you don't need to know the MAC address of the destination computer for it to receive that fucking packet. Now, blah 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 blah, what the hell does this mean? Basically means that your computer can say onto the local network who has any IP you feel like sending to. And if there happens to be a computer on the local network, on the local broadcast domain that can hear this, that has that IP address, it will say, oh, I have that. And because this is an Ethernet frame, or similar, you have the MAC address that it actually is, whatever that may be. So then you know the MAC address, and then your computer can send the packet. I know this is very complicated. Don't worry about it. Back to this. So we've established that these numbers essentially mean relatively nothing when you're not routing. So you might be tempted to think, well, okay, what is it, like an area code? Is it like a phone number? So 192 is like the state, and 168 is the city, and 1 is I don't know, the company. No, it doesn't work like that. How it works is there's a sliding window, and you can move the slider left or right, and depending on whether you need more, networks, or whether you need more computers, because each of these things takes up numbers. So let's go over how this works, or it doesn't work. So let's say we want to connect this shit to the internet. Well, we really have two options. We can either plug the internet, and I'm simplifying this, we can literally just say this wire is plugged into the internet. Interweb. If we literally plug the internet right into the local LAN, this causes some issues because none of the IPs that we've selected here are globally routable. There's a very good chance that sending from any of these addresses into the internet will have the packets dropped, probably by the first router they reach, because they're not coming from anything that makes any sense to anyone. The other option is to NAT. Generally when you want to NAT, all this shit should be on the same subnet, which in this case is impossible due to the numbers that we've chosen. But, whatever. NATing basically means that we change the numbers when they leave the network to numbers that make more sense on the internet. This is how your local IP address turns into your public IP address, of which your provider generally only gives you one of. So it's a way of splitting that network interface into multiple computer access points. Oh, shit. So what does the subnet mask and the default gateway do? And how come we don't need them if we're just talking to other machines on the same network? Well, alright, so say this is the network, right? Here's our computer. Here's our fucking loser computer here. And here's another host over here. Let's say this is your sister's computer. And we also have a router, which is here. Let's draw the cute little router symbol, which is an international fucking standard. Yeah, just have to do that here. Yeah, draw some little arrows on there. Whatever. Anyway. And then that goes out to your ISP. Let's say, right, yeah, good, whatever. So, anyway, so here's the issue. So you have your router, which routes the traffic between your network and the internet. Now, each interface on the router, remember we talked about interfaces, there is one there, and there is one there. Each interface on the router has an IP address. The one on your ISP side is generally determined by your ISP, and probably looks something just random like that. And the one on your inside side is generally determined by the manufacturer of your router, because you probably didn't change it, because you probably don't know what it means, so it's probably this, or something very close to it. And then in addition to that, each of your computers has an IP address that's probably assigned by the router, but let's just say it is this, and this, for interfaces here and here. Now, we still don't need a subnet mask. This node can send to that node, both nodes can send to the router, and the router can send to both of these nodes perfectly fine without a subnet mask or a default gateway. When do these come in? When we want to send to something outside of the network. So on the other side of the intranet is Google. And let's see what Google's IP address is today. Looks good. Let's take that one. Google is there. Now, why is this suddenly an issue when we could send to the router without any fucking extra super crazy numbers? Well, here is the answer. When this machine wants to send to an IP address that it's never sent to before, it needs to figure out what MAC address to send it to. And it uses what? ARP. The problem is that your computer and Google.com are not on the same broadcast domain, which what did we say was fancy for? When you send a broadcast, it's not going to hear it. Why? Because your broadcast will stop at the router. That is the regular behavior. Even if your router forwards the broadcast, your ISP will stop it, and it will stop at every router there forward. Now, how this works is, if you try to send something to Google, if you try to go to Google, in fact, if you probably try to even resolve the host name without a subnet mask, nothing will happen because your computer will say, who has 74, 125, it doesn't even matter what the other numbers are because no one's going to have it on your local network unless you're Google. So, this is an issue. So we have what's called the default gateway. The default gateway is basically where to send shit that isn't local. Now, our default gateway is this, the inside interface of the router, because that's where we're going to send shit, to the router, so that it can route it. That's what the router does. That's why we paid $39.99 at fucking Best Buy for it. So, now, what? How does this work? Well, we need to figure out what isn't local. How do we know what isn't local? I don't know. Well, let's see. If I send a packet from here to here, I'm sending it to 192.168.1.102. Is that local? I don't know. It looks close enough, but what's close enough? That's where the subnet mask comes in. The subnet mask determines how far in the numbers have to be the same in order to be considered local. The way that it works is that your subnet mask generally consists of a series of 1s followed by 0s. So our subnet mask for this network is 255, 255, 250. Or in other words, a /24, because the first 24 bits of the address from left to right are all 1s. What this means is that this basically lines up perfectly with that dot, and basically means that if the first 3 octets are the same, it's considered local, and a default gateway is not used. Otherwise, the default gateway is used. This doesn't always line up perfectly on the dot, and generally you wind up having to do some binary arithmetic to figure out how far in the number goes. For example, say our IP is 1064.32.100, and we're on a /25 network, which means the first 25 bits are 1s, which are literally the first 3 octets, and then the highest bit of the 4th octet. If we try to send to these 2 addresses, you would find that this one is local, and this one is not local. The reason being is that the line, in this case, would be 10.64.32.128 would be the first, or network address of the next subnet, while 10.64.32.127 is the broadcast address of the previous subnet, and the line draws in between them. This is kind of complicated, and thus you can use a subnet calculator to figure all this shit out, but no one really cares because network technicians handle all this shit for you. DHCP configures all your shit. How does that work? I'll show you. Your ISP generally assigns you your public IP address or addresses from a pool using DHCP. DHCP stands for Dynamic Hickory Charcoal Pizza. No, Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol. And basically what that means is that it provides something that's joining the network with an IP address, a subnet mask, a default gateway, 1 or more DNS servers, WINS servers, other information, time servers, other stuff, etc. Now, how that happens is, in a consumer environment, generally there's 2 DHCP fucking things happening here. The first is that when your modem, cable modem, DSL modem, Fios, fucking 4G, whatever connects, it generally issues a DHCP request to your ISP's DHCP server. Well, actually to everyone to a broadcast address on which your ISP's DHCP server can hear it, which sends back the IP address and the configuration for the DNS and all the other shit that your ISP gives you, but no one would ever sit there and type in. The second piece of DHCP that occurs here is, motherfucker, I hate these colors, is between your laptop and your consumer router. Generally, when your computer joins the network, it asks for a DHCP lease, and your router acts as a DHCP server and gives it a local address out of a pool of addresses. Therefore, you're using relatively 2 dynamic addresses, generally, to get to your internet sites and shit. Like mail and news, and, well, actually not even news anymore, like mail, DNS is something that your ISP generally gives you for free that they generally don't have to. DNS is a basic service that converts host names to IP addresses, and it's really, really hard to use the internet without it. In a consumer environment, your client, your laptop in this case, what the fuck font is that? Hold on. That's unacceptable, I'm sorry. So your laptop generally points to probably your consumer router device for its DHCP, or I'm sorry, for its DNS, which generally is that address. And then your consumer router generally proxies the DNS out to your ISP's DNS server, which generally divines the names. Host names come out of the earth at this point. What do I mean by out of the earth? They come from the roots, baby, the roots. These are the root name servers, also called the list of root hints. Basically, this is where you start to look for host names. This is basically like Ellis Island for host names. This list represents hundreds of machines, but they're basically anycasted down to a list of 13. And basically, this is where you start to look for host names. So how this works is, say you want to go to mymomsfatass.com. The first thing that needs to happen is you need to find out where .com is. So you ask one of the root servers, you say, hey, a.rootservers.net, what the fuck is the IP address for, or I'm sorry, what is the name server for? Actually, can you just answer where mymomsfatass.com is? And it's going to say, what the fuck do I look like? An open resolver. So that's going to say, hey, I can tell you that .com, the top level, .com, and specifically com dot, is home namespace, .tld servers.net or something like that. Actually, let's just take a look here. If I want to see, if I want to set no recurse, and I want to say, mymomsfatass.com, I basically got to ask the root server, so I'm going to ask, a.root servers.net, and it's going to say, whoa, you got to ask the GTLD servers. No, it's not TLD, whatever, fuck it. You got to ask the GTLD servers, because that's where .com is, so I'll say, okay, fine, I'll ask the GTLD servers, and I'll say a.gtld, I assume it's global top level domain servers.net, and it'll be like, oh shit, there's no response, let's try another one, B, okay, well, let's try H then. Alright, there we go. It says ask.com is served by that, ns1.voodoo.com, and it also gave me the IP addresses, so now I don't have to look up ns1.voodoo.com, and that's called glue records. It basically means that I don't have to start over now looking for the name server that it just gave me. So now that we know where ask.com is homed out of, we can go in and say, hey, fucking ask, I want to know where my mom's fat ass is, and it'll be like, what? Apparently, okay, well, I guess we have to use the glue records because we can't look up that address. At least not without recursion. Whee! And it says that I should go to that address. That address most likely is a catch-all address. In fact, I can tell you right now, by just typing in pretty much anything.ask.com will probably go to that address. Yes. Do I want to see what's actually there? I don't know. Let's take a look. It's blank. Let's try ask.ask.com. Ask.com! Okay. Alright, so that's how all that shit works. I don't have time. I'm going to sleep. Bye.